The Department of Justice has revealed that it would have arrested Vladimir Putin if he were to step foot in South Africa. This was after the DA succeeded in its High Court application to compel Ramaphosa to reveal contents of his affidavit on Putin's arrest warrant. The Department of Justice admits it had already forwarded a request for a local arrest warrant to the NPA Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi. With Putin no longer attending the BRICS summit, all parties agreed that the matter will no longer proceed in court. Right, Gustavo De Carvalho is a senior researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs and joins us for more on this. A very good afternoon to you. Perhaps let's discuss some of the details that stand out for you in this case and what we should essentially make of it.
Thank you very much, Mpo, and very good afternoon to you. I think what we see in this case is certainly, on the one hand, many of members of society looking for some answers from the government in terms of what would have been the response from the government if Vladimir Putin came. Of course, with the announcement 2 days ago that Vladimir Putin wouldn't be coming to South Africa during the BRICS summit, it changes slightly the narrative, but certainly it is an important development in terms of ensuring that our own rule of law is secured. I think what we've seen in the last couple of days does confirm that what the South African government has been trying to do was to get a waiver from the ICC that wasn't granted by the ICC. And to a large degree, I think the relief that both members of government, but also I would say members of the opposition, that we are not at this particular moment going into a legal crisis, a domestic crisis due to a visit of Vladimir Putin, is a very important development for us. Mm-hmm. And also focusing on many important discussions that are going to be happening during the BRICS summit in late August 2023.
I mean, as you make mention of the significance, it appears that President Cyril Ramaphosa was well aware of the formal request even before the announcement at the BRICS political parties event this week, where it was announced that Putin would not be attending.
What we've seen already for a couple of months is the discussion regarding that Vladimir Putin was likely not to come. To a certain degree, for South Africa, we've seen that the country was interested in having all of the presidents of the BRICS members, noting that there's quite a lot of important discussions happening this year in terms of the expansion of BRICS, in terms of issues about currencies and trade. But it was already expected that he wasn't going to be coming. We haven't really seen Vladimir Putin traveling to a lot of places. He did travel to China earlier this year, but many of the trips that he was expected to travel, including to Turkey a couple of weeks ago, that did not happen. So I think from an expectation point of view, that was already expected that he wasn't going to come. But certainly there was the intention from the government of getting the waiver under Article 98 of the Rome Statute that would enable him to come. It is important for us in terms of the clarity that it was granted this week, both from the statement from South African government and Russian government, but particularly the results today in terms of courts. Despite the fact that a lot of the things changed in the last couple of days, it is still an important development to ensure that legal treaties that we have signed and ratified and domesticated are still being upheld. And we are yet to expect to see some important discussions happening within South Africa on the future participation of South Africa in the International Criminal Court. And I think that is an important discussion for us to keep an eye on in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. An important one indeed. And, if Putin does hypothetically change his mind and decide to attend the summit in person, that now, according to this, means that the South African government is compelled to arrest him.
Absolutely. The fact that South Africa was compelled to do that was already a known fact. We are a signatory of the Rome Statute. We have ratified that many years ago. So that I think the current court cases, what they do provide is much more clarity around that, especially considering what happened in 2015 when al-Bashir came to South Africa, and particularly the ruling of the Supreme Court of Appeals in 2016 that did confirm that South Africa should have arrested al-Bashir at that time. So in that regard, we are having a space where it's much more clear. What it does confirm is that this issue, more than a legal issue, I think there is certainly a very important political dimension into that, where South Africa still maintains its non-aligned position when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, but it also maintains very cordial relations with Russia directly, which we're going to be seeing next week in the Russia-Africa summit that is going to happen in St. Petersburg. So that brings us some very important developments, but also confirming that we are not expecting to see some kind of a legal crisis in the country, which would have been incredibly damaging for our own legal system, but also for the country's reputation. And in terms of the messaging that it sends to the global community, I mean, how significant is that? Very significant. One of the concerns that many had is that South Africa wouldn't uphold its own rule of law, that it wouldn't uphold its treaties and legal systems. What we do see now is that our institutions still remain somehow strong, still remain able to actually provide some of these confirmations, even though the governments may seem to lose that initially. But I think for the country is an important development. It's an important development that the political nature of many of these discussions are not trumping our legal system. And I think that in itself is particularly important for us, noting that we have important political developments coming in the coming months, the Russia-Africa summit, the BRICS summit, and creating that potential crisis within South Africa in a moment of crisis, in a moment where we already have strained relations with many of our partners. It does provide an important moment for us in terms of sustaining our credibility as a nation in the international community. Very well. Thank you so much. Perhaps leaving it there for now, Gustavo De Carvalho, Senior Researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs.